If you are spending way too much time on hiring new employees, training and retraining, only to experience the exhaustion of turnover, this episode is for you. This is the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, the podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. And my guest today is a high performer indeed. Sarah Daugherty joined Paramount Calves LLC in Darlington, Wisconsin, as Workforce Development Manager 6 years ago, as owners Ken and Rebecca Norgard had about 400 hutches and were positioning for growth. Well, fast forward to today. The operation now has 50 employees that care for more than 25,000 replacement heifers across 3 sites in both Wisconsin and Kansas. And so far in 2024, they have not experienced one single employee turning over. But get this, Sarah had no background in HR when she took the job. There was no handbook for her to follow when she joined Paramount. In fact, her background included a master's in nutrition from Texas A&M University, working as a nutritionist and also a dairy management instructor at a technical college, and a 10-year career as a dairy nutrition consultant with the GPS Dairy Consulting Team. Sarah approached developing people and teams the same way she approached nutrition consulting and raising great calves, collecting and analyzing relevant data and following it up with meaningful action. And that has made all the difference. Today, Sarah is going to tell you how she has saved herself the time and stress of constantly training new employees and drag and drama of hard conversations to now having systems that support several high-performing teams. And these 3 hacks you are about to hear, they aren't fancy. In fact, all you need to do it yourself are just a few pieces of paper. So keep on listening to learn how one simple exercise that she walked herself through has created the core of culture at Paramount Calves. Also learn the key benchmark she monitors for employee turnover and the hack she created with just 4 sheets of paper that changed the game on retention. If 0 employee turnover and high-performing teams is what you are striving for, I believe you will want to take some tips from Sarah. And Sarah's also going to join us again later this week, and we're going to shift gears from human resources hacks to talking about what really matters. I've invited Sarah back to join us to celebrate Mother's Day as a mother of 6 to talk about not just being a manager, but also being a mother. And in this episode, we are sponsored by Adisseo. Adisseo is a global leader in nutritional solutions and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to optimize milk production, capture more value from their components, and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Grab your pen and paper and take some notes from Sarah. What is your role at Paramount, and what does your day look like?
So my role here is, I would call it threefold. The first portion of it is Workforce Development Manager is my title. So I kind of organize and assist our work teams. So if there's charts that need to be made for the mixing team in the milk room, I put those together. If there's protocols that need to be changed and communicated, I work with those kinds of things. I try and bring together fun activities to do, celebrations when we meet goals. I help our employees get things that they wouldn't necessarily know where to go for help. I'm like a resource, I would say, for our employees. I help with time clocks, just, kind of a human resources side of things. And then the second portion is I manage the feeding program. So I don't run the rations right now, but I ensure that what our nutritionist is asking of us is getting implemented properly, both here in Darlington and also at the breeding heifer site in Kansas. And then the third piece of that is data analysis and protocol development and compliance. So I love running numbers and trying to see where we're at. Here at Paramount, we take 4 different body weights before they're 6 months old. And then in Kansas, we're taking body weights down there. So I've got a lot of data with a lot of points that I can grab. So between all of the sites, it's about 25,000 head that we're caring for.
So at 25,000 head between 2 sites, and how many employees?
Between the 2 sites, it's about 50. It's a lot heavier here in Paramount because the young stock takes considerable more labor. So here in Paramount, we work in teams. So we've got, our largest team is the hutch feeding team, and there's 2 shifts, right? So the morning shift will come in and they feed bottles. We have about 3,000 calves on milk. And then they also feed all the grain and the water. And that's a really heavily labor-intense job. Ken likes to have all the grain in the hut yet and the water outside. So we are literally walking between huts and pouring grain in and freshening grain. Twice a week it comes out. The water is offered twice a day to the large heifers, once a day to the younger ones. And in the summer, it gets to be more than that. So that takes 2 big teams. We have a group just that stays in the milk room and prepares the bottles and cleans the bottles. And then they also they clean the trailers. We have a transport team that picks up calves daily. And those trailers are completely cleaned, sanitized, rebedded every time they come back. And then our logistics team is also a nice sized group. They do all the vaccinations and the grouping and movements. We call it the bedding team, but really they do a heck of a lot more than bed calves. They pull all the hutches off the hutch lines. They clean the hutch lines. They clean the hutches and return them back. And then they maintain a lot of the operation outside. Maintenance is a separate group. And then we've got our health team. So
there are several teams in the structure that you have to be able to care for the number of animals you do, and in a way that is labor intensive, but also that produces that high quality calf.
It's hopefully consistently high quality. There's certain times of the year where it's more difficult to raise calves. That's completely true. But what we found with the teams, and we do the same thing in Kansas, right? So we've got a team of employees that works with arrival groups, a team that works with the breeding age groups, and then the repro team. So it helps that they're accountable to each other. So Ken especially does not want to micromanage 50 people, and neither do I. I don't speak fluent Spanish. I can hardly get our greetings across, but we figure that out. But they're accountable to each other. And then the leaders that are in those roles have been here a long time, and we do try to continue to do some education so that we have fun at work, we count on each other, and we know what we're doing.
There's a strong atmosphere of team orientation, it sounds like, between the different groups that each have their own responsibilities. And you mentioned the labor intensity of caring for calves in the way that you see it best to be done. And so I bring this up because they're easier jobs a person could choose to do. But one of the things that really stands out about Paramount and about the work that you do there is you have a pretty strong employee retention, right?
And that's a work in progress, and it's also something that kind of ebbs and flows. I'm sure other dairy farms would say the same thing. I'm really happy, and I was just talking to Alex, he's our livestock manager, so he manages all the teams that directly handle the calves. And I'll say this now, and hopefully that won't change, but we've had, since the start of the year, we've had 0 turnover so far in 2024. And so I'm like, okay, we need to think about how we're going to celebrate and tell everybody thanks. I mean, it's just awesome. Love it. We don't have to train new people. We all enjoy our work. I have not heard of anyone having any disagreements or arguments. So I'm ready to celebrate. And he says, wait, let's wait till 6 months. I'm like, oh, I want the taco truck now.
Right. No kidding. Well, but when you really take a moment and look at, for one, you're right, that is something to celebrate. And fingers crossed you hit that 6-month mark and everything is still smooth sailing and the taco truck is pulling in the driveway. But when you really take a moment to step back and dissect, what do you believe are some of the core and critical components of what is leading to this success right now with employee retention?
So one of the big things is simply Alex, right? Okay, so our livestock manager cares, he understands, and he listens, right? So we're fortunate that he has grown into that role. And he'll admit too, he wasn't always wired that way. He's been working directly with Katie Dressler. Katie's our health manager, and she's been here for 10 years, and she's really helped him grow into the leader he is too. So I think part of that is also identifying and putting people in the right places. So the leaders that we have on each of our teams have been here for a considerable amount of time, but they also have traits. And you and I talked about these 4 cards that when I very first started, I was just trying to say, okay, how can I understand what people's values are? because if you don't understand what's important to your people you work with, how can you provide for them things that are valuable? And I've never been a human resources person. I had no idea where to start. So I just made these things up because I thought these are things that matter to me when I think about my job. The 4 things are work-life balance, and the cards are very simple: money, recognition, and interesting work. So I literally put them on a piece of paper in English and in Spanish. And I just said, when I sit down with somebody, just put those cards from one on top and go down. I said, they're all important. They are very important things. But in your life right now, which one would you say is the most important? And then second, third, and fourth. So one thing that I found when I did that regularly was that all of our leaders had interesting work as their top choice. So I thought, well, you know what, that's interesting, that, for lack of better words, that they would choose interesting work as their top value. Again, all 4 of them are valuable, but at that time, that's something that our leaders and our managers found as one of their highest values. So that, to me, putting the right people in the right place. If they find interesting work to be a motivation, then maybe they should be one of your leaders.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, Sarah, was how much you enjoy data and analysis. And so let's move away from blood serums and let's look at what you just shared. One conclusion that you could draw from this anecdotal data, really, of this is people data. And so what else really was revealed to you when you started posing this question and giving people these cards?
So you find that it changes and it helps you learn more about the people, right? So work-life balance is going to be important, especially for people that have families that they want to go and see their kids' activity at school, right? So yesterday I left early to get to a track meet, and I will do that a couple of times a week because that's important to me. I think that it also changes, though, right, with what's going on in your life right now. So it's also just a place to start having a conversation with people as far as it goes, moving the needle forward on data. The biggest thing I found too is I watch that 90-day turnover rate. So once we can get people to see, okay, here I am at Paramount, do I know what I'm expected to do? Do I know what to expect? When I started here, there was no handbook, there was no real onboarding, and so I kind of put together a set of core values. This is the set of values that we think are important to the people that work here, and these are the set of values that we think are important to the animals we care for, and that kind of helped set a stage for the culture that we wanted to have here. So the 90-day turnover rate, that one fell really quickly once we did those things. Once we communicated what the values are and what is expected of people and what they can expect of us.
Let's break that out a little bit. So 2 things here. We talked about identifying and communicating the values, and then also this 90-day check-in. So what did you determine were those core values?
So for people, I'm going to read them off because it's easier that way. Honesty, teamwork, effort, positivity, and skill. And I have had conversations on what order those should be in, but those are the orders that I think they should be in, because if you can't, first of all, honesty is the most important. If we can't know, I'm not going to go out and watch 3,000 hutches, and neither is Alex, and we can get a general feel for what's happening, but we need people to be completely honest and just say, hey, if we made a mistake, what did we do, and how can we figure it out? So with honesty, though, also comes not difficult conversations, but conversations that aren't accusatory, so that people don't feel threatened. So anyway, that one I think is first. Teamwork is right next to it, because as we already talked about, we need to be accountable to each other to get the jobs done correctly. Effort goes with it. We all have a hard job, and especially in the middle of winter when everything's freezing and we work outside. So you need to be able to put forth that effort. Positivity is a big one for me. optimistic to a fault sometimes. So I just think it's important that we try and keep a positive attitude. And then skill is last because, yeah, we need to be technically good at our job, but we can build that. And then, so those are for the people for our team members. For the calves, it's a little simpler. The first one is calf well-being is our number one priority. The second one is to treat each calf as an individual. And the third one is to follow nature's lead to raise them.
Core values are great, right? And you probably have a really pretty sign that they're listed in on the wall. No.
They're made on a Word document and laminated and stuck with duct tape, but they're up.
But they're done. They're up, right? It's one thing to write them down and for you to be able to see them. It's another thing to take what's on your wall and make it a culture. So what has that looked like? How have you taken the values and the words written on your wall and make them culture at Paramount?
When you're here every day, you don't really notice. People that come in that are partners to us and we work with tell me that culture is different and good and they can see it. How we do it is, I feel like it's just the way I am as a person. I want to be clear but kind. And I have a motto: to be unclear is to be unkind. And so I try to communicate that way. Alex has been really consistent with people. And if someone chooses to leave for another job, whether it's pay or if it's different hours or whatever the specific reason is that they choose to leave, he's very cautious with the rehiring because 4 out of 5 times they will return and want to work with us again.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it's a good thing. But what happens is if you continue to just say, oh, good, they're back, they know the job, we're going to put them right back here, it's too easy to just have the next person say, well, if I leave, then I'll be able to come back. And that's kind of a hard stance to take, but at the same time, it impacts our retention and it impacts our culture. Because people that are here and they're staying here and they're continuing, even though there's a construction job that's going to pay more for 3 months, right? It's hardly fair for those that choose to stay if we would hire them right back. I guess it's just the day-to-day things that we choose to do. So we try to be clear with people, we try to be consistent, we try to be fair.
And that's what's created a culture where it sounds like people are clear on what their roles are, what's expected of them, how things are expected to be handled if there is something that doesn't go well, as you talked about, especially that honesty piece, and being able to work with each other to make it all happen. You've taken these core values and really collectively, as you just said, Sarah, it's not just you, it's Alex who's a lead on that as well, and you're both on the same page doing it. You also talked about the 90-day check-in. And so here again, take your data and analytical side that you love so much and talk about that 90-day mark. Is that something you've always measured or you started to measure? How's that evolved?
When I started here, I got tired of having the same conversation over and over. If we have a new person come in and we explain where things are and how you punch in and then they leave in a month and now we have to start over again, I just didn't want to keep spending my time doing that same thing. When I started, that was in 2019 was the first number. I'm just looking over. Yeah, the first numbers that I started looking at. I just said, well, geez, I've had 14 conversations in 3 months. No wonder. For me, it's hard because I have to get another person. So it takes 2 people to have a conversation, myself and an interpreter. So most of our managers are bilingual, but most of our entry-level folks are not. So it just got to be a real time waster. And as much as I like chatting with folks, I don't like having the same conversations over and over. And I don't like our managers to have to keep training new people. So there's no shining star on why I picked it. I just thought, well, if we can get people here for at least 3 months, they kind of start having relationships with the people they work with. They get into a routine. They kind of, at that point, can understand, yes, I like it here, or no, I don't, and they stay longer. So that's why I picked it.
It just gave you a consistent place to use as your own benchmark.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You can't Google what should be a good turnover rate in dairy, especially replacement heifers. If you don't start somewhere, you won't know if you're getting better or not.
So you found a consistent way to measure that. And then have you implemented like a 90-day review or anything like that?
That is something I am not very good at. So I would say no. The direct managers, they work side by side with their team every day. And so we don't do a lot of that. If there's somebody that has a situation that they want to have discussed, we just jump in Alex's office and we have a quick conversation. So no, that's not something I'm doing right now.
What difference do you think it's made as you've implemented some of these things in your time at Paramount? So when you look at, for one, identifying motivational factors, identifying core values and communicating them and reinforcing them regularly, and also looking at the data and the metrics around employee retention, what difference has it made?
The biggest difference that it makes is we're a happier place to work because we don't have to deal with the unfortunate, difficult conversations nearly as often. And then the other thing is we can get to the business of caring for calves. So that's a hard enough job without working through what people's intentions are first. And that's not to say that we come to work every day and it's roses and it's not easy. And that was actually, as a nutritionist, I never had the connection with people because it was in and out, right? So you'd go to a dairy and you'd visit them twice a month or once a week, and you'd hear, and then you'd try and offer advice, right? Here, you get to come back the next day and you have those connections with people, and they can be hurtful and they can be wonderful, but they're much more in depth than they ever were. So I think it makes it that much more important for me anyway, to be clear and to be honest. And I want to be a very nice person that's valuable and people feel like they can talk to me, but I also want to be sure that I'm true and honest and not fake.
So you're holding yourself to those core values that you sketched out that are looking right at you right now on the wall. I'm so glad that we've been able to have a really good conversation today about not just management and raising a ton of calves, but really good insights from a person that is doing amazing and incredible things in an intentional way.
Thank you. And I want to tell you thank you too for the work you're doing. I've really sat down and listened to more of your sessions and learning a lot, and I love the depth and the breadth of your conversations. So you're bringing in the young leaders. Great idea. Got some new Instagram people I'm following now. Your Dairy Fitness girl, she was awesome. So good job.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
So there you have it. 3 human resource hacks from Sarah at Paramount Calves that are so simple, you can grab a few pieces of paper and do them right now. And so, what were they? One more time. These are it. Number 1, if you haven't identified your farm's core values, just start now. Write down the words that you already live by and that you want your team to live by too, and communicate them. Number 2, take out 4 pieces of paper and write down these words. You can write them in English, you can write them in Spanish, or both. And the 4 words are this: work-life balance, pay, interesting work, and recognition. Now ask your team members to rank their importance, and you may be surprised what you learn. But then take this information and use your knowledge to incentivize employees based on what actually motivates them. And hack number 3, start tracking that 90-day turnover rate. Like we always hear, you can't monitor what you don't measure. Try using this as a metric. Look for trends and determine what just might make a difference in the first 90 days for your employees to get them off to the right start and keep them wanting to come back every day. Be sure to tune in to our next episode to hear more from Sarah as we celebrate Mother's Day, and I've asked Sarah to talk with us, a mother of 6, about what it means to be a manager, a mother, to manage a high-performing team and a high-performing family. And she talks about how she's shifted her own focus to what really matters. It's a message that will resonate with both moms and dads who want to do it all and do it well on our next episode. This episode was brought to you by Uplevel Dairy Podcast, founding partner at Aseo, a global leader in nutritional solutions and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to optimize milk production, capture more value from components, and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Feed is the greatest expense on any dairy operation, and don't you want to know how an adjustment to the ration will affect your bottom line? Adaseo empowers nutritionists to make informed ration balancing decisions with MilkPay.com. Customizable to your dairy's own data, this profitability calculator puts the power of real-time milk market information in the palm of your hand. Find out how much your latest ration change is really costing you with the free MilkPay app available on iOS and through milkpay.com. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thank you for listening to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast.